Hi, this is Al Yankovic. I'm the creator, co-executive producer, head writer, and the Al in The Weird Al Show.
I'm Tom Frank. I produced the show with Al and had the dubious pleasure of selling it to CBS.
I'm Peyton Reed, the director of The Weird Al Show, and I think I do a voice of an alien at some point, so we'll get there.
Yeah. And I guess it was just a little less than a decade ago when the three of us collectively gave up our lives, our sleep, and our sanity in order to produce that seminal children's TV show. This is the first time since then that we've all been together. Well, I was going to say it was the first time we've been together in a room, but we were all at my wedding about 5 years ago. But this is the first time we've been in a room where we've had the chance to discuss the making of this program. So this may be more of a therapy session than an actual DVD commentary. We'll go into the whole history and the origins of the show a little later, but in a telescoped version, basically my manager Jay Levy and I were trying to sell a Saturday morning kind of kids show since about 1984, and we took a lot of meetings and talked to a lot of people. And it wasn't until 1997, early in the year, that CBS decided that they were interested in the Weird Al Show. But oddly enough, that year a mandate had come down from the FCC that they had to do 3 hours of educational programming. That's what they were looking for. And they said, we'd like to buy your show, but we're only buying educational children's shows. At which point, of course, we said, this is an educational show. So we prostituted ourselves a little bit to get on the air, but being educational is something we took on gladly, thinking, it'll be like Pee-wee Show. It'll be a personality-driven, funny show that appeals to kids and adults. We'll be able to be irreverent and be funny, and at the same time, they'll learn a little lesson at the end of the show. But that wasn't the way it came down exactly.
Well, I think we also kind of assumed up front that we were going to be allowed to give our audience some credit for having the intellect to discern the message, as opposed to using sort of a ball-peen hammer to hit them in the face with it again and again and again and again.
It was definitely the hit you over the head repeatedly school of education. CBS didn't seem to think that kids would learn something unless it was reiterated constantly, which is...
Al, I wanted to remind you, remember how much ILM charges for those effects? The skeleton effects?
No, how much was that?
I think that was... We got the skeleton, we got the body skeleton for about $10,000, and the skull, I think, was $8,000.
Wow. Well, you got to go with ILM. They're the best. And worth every penny, even though that was the entire budget of our show.
And how ironic that he plays a cool dude in this show and he plays a geek in Alias.
I think J.J. Abrams saw this episode and said, hey, that's the guy.
Let's have a moment of silence for the Harvey the Wonder Hamster theme song.
Oh, Harvey, Harvey, Harvey the Wonder Hamster. He doesn't bite and he doesn't squeal. He just runs around on his hamster wheel.
We spent 5 hours making that red ball bounce exactly on every note of the word.
Here comes the SPCA.
Harvey the Wonder Hamster was something that I'd done in my Al TV specials on MTV since about 1984. He's a recurring character, and he translated over into the Weird Al Show. And he's a real hamster. He does not talk. He's a hamster, and we got constant notes from the network saying, "Can't he have more personality, or dance, or sing, or talk?" And we had to explain, no, he's a real hamster.
But they were very comfortable with the imitatable behavior, things like what we're seeing here with Harvey parachuting off of a remote control toy, because certainly kids rarely have both hamsters and remote control cars and would be tempted to do this at home.
We should explain the concept of IB, or imitatable behavior, because that became a big issue on the show with certain gags that we had in there. And Al, what is IB?
IB would be imitatable behavior. That was what we always had to watch out for. We were told we could never model any kind of negative or dangerous behavior on our show that kids could easily imitate at home. Although there's a lot of it, actually, that wound up being in the show.
I was going to say, you mean like shaving off your eyebrow?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Smashing a plate on your head?
Uh-huh.
Dipping your arms in chocolate.
That would all be considered imitatable behavior. Like ripping your pants, that would be, you wouldn't want to have that in the show.
Although I think I actually really managed to successfully defend the dipping your arms in chocolate gag by reassuring the network that very few children owned giant vats of melted chocolate, and that therefore it was probably safe on that gag.
I do get the thing about imitatable behavior. But really, if your kid is that easily influenced, you should just throw away the TV set. Anyway, the sad fact is that because of these concerns about imitatable behavior, And because we were forced to constantly jam these lessons, these educational objectives down people's throats, we wound up with a show where my humor was often compromised and the educational content itself was sometimes questionable. It sort of wound up being a show for nobody.
No,
And
that's not fair.
I'm very proud of that. It's a show for nobody.
No, actually, there's a lot of stuff in this series that I'm very proud of, and I think is very funny. And there's a lot of stuff as we were watching it that's going to really make us wince. But I think the key to really enjoying this series is dramatically lowering your expectations. And
No. I think you've set it up nicely. That as long as they understand the context, that anytime you hear one of us wince, like on a voiceover like the one that you're hearing now, that was something that was forced on us and does not reflect your creative genius.
So right there was one of those obnoxious voiceovers that Billy West did for us. And the network wound up using those as a last-minute quick fix for our show. Because if any of our episodes didn't quite fulfill the educational objective to their satisfaction, which was, let me think, that was all of them.
Yes. Well, no, the problem was, and we'll stop talking about this and we should really just talk about the show, but the issue really was more that they would decide that it didn't really hit all of the notes as we were shooting. So we often found ourselves literally on the fly, like working a line into the script that was so grotesquely overt and on point that it sort of just stopped the comedic flow of what had originally been scripted and planned.
And I think we wound up with this conceit that at the beginning of every show, we just said, well, let's just spell it out literally, and we wrote the moral of each episode. But we also were a bit angry about having to do that, so we ripped it in half, and that was what led us into every episode.
Yes, actually, I think that was Peyton's idea. That was a good...
A very passive-aggressive.
Yeah, I was an angry young man.
And I think we made the Billy West obnoxious on purpose just because we thought it was obnoxious
and
that we had to be doing this.
And I think maybe if they're good, we can share some of the educational messages that we rejected that the network suggested, so that they'll maybe understand a little bit more why we were so upset by them.
Yeah, we had an educational advisor, Dr. Gordon Berry from UCLA, whose job it was to make sure that we're fulfilling our objective. And at the 11th hour, when it was determined that we need to talk about Fred Huggins. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Al, tell
Fred Huggins. This was a character that I did. Which is part Mr. Rogers, part Captain Kangaroo, part Doug Henning.
Part Mrs. Rogers.
Yeah.
The hair is definitely Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah. And this is before I had my LASIK surgery, so I am blind right here. That's my unfocused, crazy look, because I cannot see a teleprompter. I can't see anything right now. And that's Stan Freberg doing the voice and operating the puppet of Papa Booley, and his son Donovan operating the puppet of Baby Booley.
You don't want to pay a lot.
Oh, Tom, talk about this.
Why, that's my son Trip, who was a last-minute sub when the child actor that was supposed to be in the pirate daycare skit didn't show up. So we just put him in as a sub. And he wouldn't do what Peyton told him, which was terribly embarrassing for me, because Peyton wanted him to make the car go on the road, and he insisted on putting it in the lake. 13 years later, he's doing the same darn stuff.
Has it scarred him, the fact that I fired him on the day?
No, he's okay with that now. But it's interesting because Al and I were talking about the fact that Pirate Daycare, we did in fact get a note from the network that said Pirate Daycare was preferable to other pirate parodies because, you really wouldn't necessarily want pirates watching your children.
Oh, okay, now this is Downtown Julie Brown. We're doing Bungalow of Style here, which is a parody of the old Cindy Crawford MTV show House of Style. So naturally, we approached Cindy first. She turned us down. We approached some other supermodels, and the rejection we got from Tyra Banks was particularly memorable. I found out that Tyra had passed on doing this show, and I really wanted to know why. So I got her representative on the phone and said, we really wanted Tyra Banks to be on the Weird Al Saturday morning TV show for kids, and why doesn't she want to do it? And the response we got was, Tyra doesn't like Saturday morning, she doesn't like TV, she doesn't like kids, and she doesn't like you.
Anything else?
That was pretty much it. Covered everything.
Well, you can just take that next top model, girlfriend. Well, I've seen Tyra recently, and she does like donuts and vats of chocolate.
Oh, ooh, meow.
Hey, I'll talk about the design of the set. What was your concept there?
Well, this was not my concept, but it's Wayne White's design, and Wayne White did the design for Pee-wee's Playhouse. Now Pee-wee was obviously a big influence. We all loved Paul's show, but we had to be careful because the Weird Al Show was really the first personality-driven Saturday morning kids show on network TV since Pee-wee's Playhouse, and it happened to be on the same network, so we knew everybody was going to be drawing comparisons, which we try to discourage. Although I guess hiring the exact same set designer wasn't a great way to discourage that. And it also didn't help much when CBS put out a press release announcing that I was going to be doing a kid show in the style of Pee-wee's Playhouse. So, now this is a commercial parody written by Ron Weiner, who I have to say, in many ways was probably the most valuable asset to our writing staff because he was really funny and edgy, but not so edgy that his stuff couldn't get approved by the network.
Well, and he was the only one who didn't really throw things at us at the 11th hour when we asked him to make changes. He smiled.
I got excited about this because it was shot on film and it was single camera as opposed to the multi-camera, which I had never done before, which is another topic for later.
Peyton's a single camera guy.
Now, Al, talk about actually shaving your eyebrow off here.
I think this might be another incredible special effect. This was probably like a $40,000 effect, wasn't it? Oh, did I really shave it off, or did I just cover it with a wrinkled piece of flesh-colored latex?
You know what? I'm sure by the time you actually got that makeup on your face, it was $40,000 in overages, so...
Waymoby. That's where I got the name from my record label. This particular episode was written by Mark O'Keefe, although it was rewritten by Heidi Atherton. I believe it was your assistant, right?
Yes, it was my assistant at the time. Very talented assistant, and obviously a writer as well, because her last version was the one that the network approved.
Right. We were, like it or not, an educational Saturday morning kids show, and some of our writers were better than others at dealing with that. Mark O'Keefe, for example, really funny writer. Since working on The Weird Al Show, he's gone on to write feature films like Bruce Almighty and Click with Adam Sandler. So, funny guy. But we just couldn't use a lot of his material. Mark would hand in a script, and there'd be jokes about lesbianism, drug abuse, child molestation. Now, I'm not saying the jokes weren't funny, but I just don't know how we ever thought that we were going to be able to use that stuff on a kid's show. So it was a little bit of a tough fit.
Well, and we housed them all in a refugee camp / motel across the street from the rest of the production offices. And I think given the fact that our mandate kept changing on the fly, it was probably a little more frustrating for them than they had thought going in. But you did a great job of picking the writers because almost every single one of them has gone on to greater success.
Mysteries of the universe. I love this. This is where I take actual educational films from the 50s, re-edit them, and then add a new voiceover so that they're even more ridiculous than they were already. I decided to write all these segments myself, which wound up being a lot of work because I wound up having to screen easily over 100 hours of footage from the Streamline film archives. In this particular one, we had to change literally every joke because every joke the network thought was inappropriate.
And yet they allowed us to use this footage of a man falling asleep at the wheel. So therein lies the irony, I suppose.
Now, Al, talk about the fact that you discovered Tiger Woods before anyone knew who he was.
This is Gary Leroy. Gary Leroy Gray actually played young Tiger Woods in the Tiger Woods story.
Excuse me.
And he's also a voice now on the Fairly Odd Parents.
He was a great kid.
And did a very compelling and convincing Denny's ad that ran nationally for a long time.
Convincing in the way that it made you want to go to Denny's and eat.
Exactly, for the Grand Slam breakfast.
Wow.
I should also point out that the voice on the educational movie was Bob Scott, who we just loved. He actually did those kind of educational films earlier on in his career, and shortly after doing the Weird Al Show, he retired, and I think he lives in Florida now. But he was great.
So go visit him.
Go visit him.
Hey, Bobby.
In that educational film we just saw, the one about safety, some of the notes we got from the network were just mind-boggling. In my original cut, there was a shot of a kid drinking at a drinking fountain, and for some reason, he's got his eyes closed. And the voiceover was, "Never fall asleep at the drinking fountain. That's a sure way to drown." Which I thought was kind of funny, but the network was furious. Do you want to make children afraid to use public drinking fountains because they think they're going to drown?
Yeah, they were a little overly cautious, I think. The guy, our instructor, he had worked on Fat Albert, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently it wasn't a problem to have a morbidly obese inner-city child that had no nutrition in his life whatsoever, but that was still educational back then.
Or kids playing in a junkyard.
Correct.
Brian O'Neill, who was our point person at CBS, of course, his claim was he had written the Coolio vehicle Fat Beach, P-H-A-T Beach.
Which was really educational, depending on your perspective. This is the inside of Harvey's house, which was fascinating and was literally done to scale and detail. It was a beautiful set piece.
I remember Surge Licensing, the people that made $1 gazillion marketing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They signed on to do all the merchandising for the Weird Al show if it became a big hit, which is to say there was no merchandising.
Kevin actually dresses like that. I don't think there was wardrobe for Kevin. That's what he wears.
Another special effect.
Yeah, the effects budget was huge.
I'm just fascinated that we were able to have them eat ping pong balls. Once again, something that kids could easily find around the house.
This is Al's mailbag. This is also a holdover from the old Al TV shows. Tried to reuse as many of these bits as appropriate.
Unfortunately, we also tried to rig your mail shoot, and I'm pretty sure that I lost 4 or 5 years of my life because it had to be re-rigged every single time you shot it, and if it didn't happen exactly correctly, it was a nice 20-minute stop down and during production.
Tom, as the director, I have to take full responsibility for that. I'm really sorry.
No, this was a bit where I think originally we wanted it to be earwax that I pull out.
Correct, and
apparently that was too disgusting. So instead, it's like a wad of boogers, which apparently is better than earwax.
yes.
I'm beyond understanding.
Well, now, as a parent now, Al, you should know it's easier for kids to dig for boogers than it is for earwax.
Ah.
8-inch tall savage warrior.
They weren't crazy about the mini Al gag here either for some reason.
What, they think that's imitatable behavior? Kids might shrink themselves down. We're really concerned about that.
Let's move on.
And imitate Xena, the warrior princess.
Hey, stop reading letters. That's lame, all right?
So, Al, how did Dick Clark Productions get involved with the show?
Oh gosh, Tom, you want to take that?
Well, actually, my agent, Sean Perry, who is now with Endeavor, was also associated with Al. And he asked me if I would sit down and meet with Al because Al had a TV show idea for a kid's show.
Wait a
And
second. It's
Patton
Patton
Oswalt.
Oswalt.
We love Patton. Very funny stand-up on King of Queens.
What's that
And
goop on you?
the Comedians of Comedy
You know, the
documentary.
secret club thing?
Okay, Tom, go.
And so
And what happened
so
to
I
your
was looking for a
eyebrow?
show, and Al came in, and he did a great job of selling me on the concept, and we signed on right away. And then, actually, we were for a brief while affiliated with DreamWorks.
And you can imagine how excited I was to be partnered not only with Dick Clark, but also DreamWorks, which was a brand new company back then. We were like their second TV deal ever, and definitely the first kid show they were ever involved with.
At some point, we stopped being in bed, as they say, with DreamWorks.
Our
and
option ran out, and they failed to pick it up, and they basically said that, good luck, we don't think you're going to be able to sell the show. And about 2 weeks later, we did.
we did.
Yeah.
I am such a fool!
And no good deed goes unpunished, obviously.
They were not happy.
Just look at Patton's pants. Those are awesome.
And he actually wears those. I don't think we had wardrobe for him either.
Great.
Stupid, 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 stupid!
This would be Al, I think, really learning the educational message.
Spike's gone, you can come
If
out.
only that hamster had more personality.
There's-
there we go.
There's one of those thought bubbles. Like that was kind of the big compromise. Was like, if he's not going to talk,
Yeah.
why don't we have thought bubbles for everything?
Hey, it's the Hooded Avenger.
Brian Haley.
Which to this day, I think was the inspiration for the ambiguously gay duo superheroes.
Oh gosh, Brian was on like Mars Attacks and Baby's Day Out and McHale's Navy and Pearl Harbor and a stand-up comedian. We auditioned a lot of people for Hooded Avenger, and I just thought Brian was just really, really funny. I auditioned him for UHF and a couple other projects, and this was the first thing we actually were able to hire him for.
And he really was perfect. Although that suit, I think, probably was about 8,000 degrees whenever he was wearing
it's
it.
neoprene. It was awful. So the Bare Naked Ladies.
You mean BNL?
Yes, because we were not allowed to call them bare naked ladies, and I'm glad Peyton pointed that out. Although I'm most fond of the fact that, please note the medieval costumes that they're wearing, because that day when I arrived at the studio, the bare naked ladies were standing out on the loading dock getting ready to get back into their car because no one had told them they would be wearing medieval costumes on the show. So they ended up being really great sports about it, particularly after we told them that we couldn't say their name on the show.
We introduced them two different ways. I had to introduce them as BNL and as Bare Naked Ladies, just because at the time time, we didn't know what we'd be able to get away with because CBS literally was saying, "Oh, you can't say bare naked ladies,"
Right.
Even though that was their name, and they've been very popular on children's shows in Canada for some years.
And I believe also that the song that they're singing is Shoebox, which is sort of an ambiguous tortured love story / infidelity song, which is very, kid friendly.
Kids love it. They love infidelity. It is amazing that they actually stayed between the wardrobe and not being able to say their names, that they just didn't.
Well,
if they had been an American band, they would have left. Because they're Canadian and nice, they stayed.
And I really give Al a lot of credit for that, because it was Al's ability to basically sweet talk, coerce, and be a stand-up guy with everybody who came within 100 yards of this show that made people do what they did for it.
So, Al, when did the concept of having live bands on the show?
We always wanted to have live bands on the show, even from the beginning, but originally we were going to just torture them more, like we were about to torture bare naked ladies by making them perform in medieval outfits. But, like we were going to have Hootie and the Blowfish perform in a giant bowl of yogurt, things like that. We were basically lucky to get anybody on the show, period. So,
Now.
But it was tough. It was tough getting celebrities on the show. I mean, we were on the show. We're on the stage that Johnny Carson shot the original Tonight Show on. Right next door to this stage, they're shooting the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And more than once, I literally had to go into the hallway trying to troll for celebrity guests.
And you found a few. I think Drew Carey came over one day.
That's right. That's how I met Drew Carey. But I became kind of unpopular with the Tonight Show staff because I guess I became a bit of a
celebrities.
Look out, Al's on the troll.
Oh.
So Bare Naked Ladies, originally they wanted to come on and do What a Good Boy, and I forget why we wouldn't let them do that, or they couldn't do that, and we suggested If I Had $1 Million, and they absolutely refused to do that. So this Shoebox was sort of the compromise, I guess. And this was I believe their very first national U.S. TV appearance.
And Shoebox is still one of my favorite songs.
This is great. This was a really, really good booking, and I'm happy that we got one of my very favorite groups on the show.
Peyton, why don't you talk a little bit about how you shot the bands, because that was different than the way you were shooting the rest of the show, and I know that you were looking for something that had a little different energy or feel to it than...
Yeah, because you're having live bands, you need a certain amount of coverage and movement, or it's just going to die. So it was, again, my first experience doing any kind of multi-camera shooting, and one of my main memories of the show is literally sprinting between the control booth and the stage, because I was used to, being on the stage or the set and working with the actors and the camera there, but that ain't how it works in multi-camera TV. And by the way, I haven't done it since. And this show, probably, if you look at how it's shot, that may be a reason why.
No.
No, but it's a whole different thing. But yeah, it was just trying to keep the energy going, and also in terms of the editing, Michael Greer, our editor, who cut all 13 episodes, we would go through the line cuts and really just snap up the cutting, and we looked at everything from like the Monkees. Actually, the Monkees TV series was an influence on the way we cut the thing. It was really fast, and I know, Al, you wanted it to be fast as well, because
Absolutely.
That's how the gags play.
Yeah, we had such a problem with the name Bare Naked Ladies, and I'm just glad we never booked the Butthole Surfers, because that would have just
Absolutely
been a nightmare.
No, that would have probably been okay.
Here's my favorite logo of all time. I wanted to have the most anxiety-provoking logo ever.